Dobro večer, pozdrav svima ispred Udruženja hrvatskih arhitekata i dobrodošli na ovaj program koji zajednički organiziraju UHA i Arhitektonski fakultet u Zagrebu. Program se odvija u sklopu UHA-ine programske linije SKUP, za koju ste možda već i čuli, koja se temelji na nominacijama za godišnje nagrade, ali se bavi širim strukovnim, prostornim i društvenim temama. Evo, prvo bi kratko htio reći kako je ovo događanje uopće nastalo. Dakle, prostor u kojem se nalazimo, odnosno projekt uređenja ovog prostora i njegove prenamjene u arhitektonski studio i radionicu, nominiran je za nagradu Bernardo Bernardi za 2024. godinu i već pri obilasku radova koji konkuriraju za nagrade shvatili smo da je pred nama neka specifična arhitektonska intervencija koja nudi neke zanimljive odgovore na niz pitanja suvremenih arhitektonskih praksi. Odlučili smo organizirati program kojim ćemo ovo mjesto predstaviti javnosti, kojim ćemo vas upoznati sa autorima projekta, a nekako u isto vrijeme smo shvatili da Mojca Smode Cvitanović, prodekanica za međunarodnu suradnju Arhitektonskog fakulteta u Zagrebu, je odlučila organizirati zagrebačko gostovanje URED-a Vidic Grohar Arhitekti. Taman se poklopilo da je Jure Grohar iz spomenutog ureda bio u žiriju ovogodišnjih UHA-inih nagrada i on je upravo napisao obrazloženje nominacije za ovaj projekt, pa smo onda odlučili sve spojiti i organizirati jedno zajedničko događanje. Kao što ste imali priliku pročitati na web stranici, dakle danas imamo ovo neko trodilno događanje. Na početku će nam Filip Romić iz studija SKUP-A ukratko predstaviti projekt, da vidite uopće o čemu se točno radi, da shvatite kako ovaj prostor nastao. Zatim će arhitekti Vidic Grohar održati jedno polusatno, možda malo dulje predavanje o svom radu, predstaviti svoje prakse, a nakon toga imamo okrugli stol koji ćemo moderirati kolegica Ana Boljar i ja, u kojima ćemo sa svim današnjim predavačima, autorima popričati kako o temama Klaonice, tako i o nekim slovenskim bliskim temama. Evo za početak da najavim praksu SKUP-A. Dakle, kao prema opisu koji su nam sami poslali, SKUP-A je arhitektonska platforma koju su 2016. godine osnovali Filip Romić i Krešimir Romić, a djeluje na presjeku konceptualnog, tehnološkog i materijalnog prostora u arhitekturi. U fokusu njihova rada nalazi se kontinuirano istraživanje, ne samo prostora, već i uvjeta njegova nastanka i transformacije. Hibridizacijom analognih i digitalnih sustava preispituju tradicionalne prostorne paradigme i razvijaju otvorene forme prototipove koje redefiniraju granice arhitektonskog djelovanja. Putem svoje prakse zagovaraju arhitekturu kao alat društvene odgovornosti i emancipacije, a ne autoritarnog oblikovanja, te vjeruju u potencijal otvorenog dijela. U tom smislu njihov rad neprestano oscilira između akcije, sumnje i dijaloga. Evo, Filip Romić će vam ukratko predstaviti projekt.
Dobar dan, prije svega, drago mi je vidjeti vas u ovolikom broju jer nikad ovoliko ljudi nije bilo u radionici. Čak je suludo izgleda. Zapravo, više ćemo o praksi i temom kojima se mi bavimo možda prokomentirati u okruglom stolu. Vi samo morate zamisliti, kad smo mi zatekli ovaj prostor, da je on bio u potpunosti uništen, devastiran, da je bio bez iti jednog otvora, da je bio na svim mjestima je mogućim prokušnjavao i kad smo došli ovdje zapravo smo se uhvatili za glavu i rekli jesmo li mi ludi, gdje mi idemo. I shvatili smo da sve što imamo u tom vremenu, da imamo vrijeme. I onda smo starom japanskom kaizen poslovicom išli dan za danom. Mi smo imali ured u Katranu koji je bio u blizini. I zapravo bi svaki dan poslije svog posla ili tijekom posla, možda i u nedostatku arhitektonskog posla, dolazili ovdje i radili i zapravo gradili sebe kroz taj prostor. Gradili svoj identitet i zapravo na neki način postavili temelje svoje prakse. Ono što je zapravo ključno u ovom prostoru je da je on devalviran na dvije zone. Imamo cijelo vrijeme taj ping-pong odnos između radionice i uredskog prostora gdje mi zapravo projektiramo unutar ovog kružnog stola i svaki put kad zateknemo neki problem mi zapravo njega preispitujemo u analognom djelovanju. I super je to što zapravo svaki naš klijent kad dođe prije svega dobije maketu, uvijek prvo dobije maketu, nakon toga kad se taj projekt kreće prema realizaciji dobiva stalno praćenje, dobiva ispitivanje u 1:1, dobiva ispitivanje detalja, ispitivanje materijala i na neki način to nam omogućuje da budemo slobodniji arhitekti u svojim odlukama i da ne budemo robovi tog digitalnog detalja. Znači, provjeravamo sve ono što se događa. Vidim da kolege Vidic i Grohar imaju spremno predavanje, pa vezano za praksu što se tiče ostalog ćemo prokomentirati u okruglom stolu, pa bi zamolio njih da dođu naprijed i istupe.
Thank you for inviting us here, combining these two events. So, Geoscope and our lecture that should happen at the Faculty of Architecture, but then not to split the public, we decided that maybe we should join the event. First, thank you to the Faculty of Architecture, to Mojca, to Frane, of course, to be flexible enough to, in few days, reorganize the let's say, the agenda. We changed the lecture today in the morning, so maybe we will improvise a bit. But as the settlement is nicely informal, I think it should be okay. So first, something a bit about our office. We are a very small office. We are between 2 and 5 people. At the moment, 2 or 2.5. And basically, our career began, I mean, we made our diplomas in 2010 in Ljubljana, and then we were teaching there for 10 years as assistants. And of course, because of that, more or less, we could not really do, let's say, projects seriously. So Anja still is teaching at faculty. I'm now more in the office. So our 4 days at the faculty then changed in, let's say, 4 days in our office. So this is the office when we moved in. So it was never ever so clean. And these are just few people that worked with us during the years. And a bit about our, let's say, I wouldn't say method, but what are our interests, or maybe what's our position in the architecture. So this is, of course, the Ivan Kožarić that you all know. It's, I mean, this is from all the lectures, so we didn't put it here because we are in Zagreb. So in Munich, we don't put Munich artists and so on. But because what he does is somehow, we think, could be also relevant for work as an office. So here on the left, do you see this? Yes. Here on the left-hand side, you see the 60s abstract sculpture, but this is basically it's the interior of the freezer. So the idea is that something that's banal, the life itself can somehow become really serious artwork. So life can be material to work as a creative person. Or, of course, the Fičko, again, a very simple possibility how to move a family around. Again, something totally banal, a car that's in a way iconic, but totally, at some point, was totally everyday. But again, was a theme for doing art. So it's not, I think not that architecture is not serious, it's super serious, probably. But the idea that the kind of surrounding that's around you, or the society that we are in, should be material for making architecture, no? In his case, art. But not just as some kind of compromise or lean over, but in a way as a method how to critically intervene in the reality in order to produce work of some substance of architecture, maybe to have some kind of relevant position in the society, because it works with the themes that are there, and of course some other things, let's say kind of humor is probably also important, so that you're not you are serious, but in a way not too serious about what you do. So to have some easiness when you work and think about architecture or yourself as an architect. But now, later we will show 3 projects of different scales that couple work with a specific theme, but now just a few projects that we did some years ago, so that present our work that you probably don't know. So this was exhibition. So we work on all kinds of things, exhibitions, let's say, smaller buildings, interiors, curatorial projects, try to produce, let's say, a book from time to time and so on. And this was an exhibition of photography of Plečnik. Photographer was Geoffrey James, Canadian photographer, that architect from Ljubljana, Tina Gregorić, found, and she was the curator of this exhibition. Exhibition was basically exhibition of his photos, but there are two levels to the exhibition: photos of Ljubljana public spaces articulated by Plečnik, but also, so this is the outside part, and the round part was photos of Plečnik's home, so kind of this intimate place when he worked. The exhibition was put in AC2, Architekturcentrum Wien. Just a few words about the material. Of course, it has to be easily movable, super cheap, and it was made from cardboard pipes. Of course, also in this way, kind of ready-made, that contemporary ready-made, but maybe inspired by Plečnik, that used ready-made in a way that to produce kind of new, let's say, architecture. The next one, this is actually older, was one of our first projects when we began with our office, kind of officially. It was in an ex-industrial building. You will see it also later. It was fitness center or gym. A gym. The budget was like 200 euros per square meter, but we were before there without electricity, windows, and everything. So we had to find some kind of material idea that would be cheap, but that would also be resistant enough, but it would produce some kind of, let's say, ambiental vibe or feel. So of course, there were already big spaces and kind of industrial structures that we just somehow filled in with these concrete blocks from which we produced also all the furniture, so the bars, the benches, etc. The next one was a furniture project for an aula of a dance theater. That's next one. That's also at the same time a small technical museum in Ljubljana. The idea was that, of course, they needed new reception, but our idea was that with a series of furniture, we tried to add a new layer and kind of make an architectural intervention in the existing let's say, scenario. It's made of steel. The idea was, of course, to have something that's in a way near the materiality there, but with the blue color. The blue color was there on the windows, actually done not in the 19th century, but in the 80s. So, but we said, okay, it's kind of legit layer. It happened at some time. We will just go with it and make the furniture that's made of steel, that's really heavy, but we will make it basically lighter with this color. But also with the only operation that was there was kind of, we were basically bending, folding it like a paper. It was actually done just with the model. So as we fold the paper, we later, the workers folded the plates. We got the stiffness, and of course also the ergonomy, this kind of minimum of ergonomy, so that it's not totally minimal or abstract, but that it has some kind of places where you can't put yourself. And then approximately at the same time we made in the same building where the gym is, we made an intervention for the owner for some kind of let's say a bit different type of office space. Of course, the budget was, as ever in our case, quite moderate. So we decided that we will, let's say, make the 2 meters and 30 will be tactile, materialized. Everything else is just as it was. So the cheapest solutions possible, visible installations, just colored with white color. So basically, the tactile layer is kind of, let's say, space for people, for living things. Up there are the machines, kind of this death kind of situation. This is, of course, we tried to make a photo that's not totally aestheticized, curated, but that it shows some kind of already things that were put there that are not totally perfect and so on. And of course, yes, we used things that were there as radiators that were, I mean, we had really enough of radiators, so we did some kind of, let's say, interventions with them, like kind of sculptures, in order to avoid the banality of the, let's say, radiator. And so these are, let's say, the production of the first few years that was somehow caught in this book. There was an initiative to let's say, put together like 10 or something Slovenian younger practices, and this was the book, and then later the event in Skutz Gallery that went a bit around. It was in Vienna, Berlin, I think, Maribor. So this was kind of, okay, the overview of when we began to work a bit, let's say, seriously. I'm really reluctant to say that, because our office is really small and our production is really small. So now let's say, the official part of the lecture. We'll talk about the temporality. This is, so we chose 3 projects that the temporality is some kind of, it's of course it means flexibility, it means changes, it means opposite to duration, to dogmatic situations and so on. But so we'll show with 3 projects in 3 different scales and 3 different, okay, if you call it program, types of temporality that were more or less put in existing situations, this or the other way. But now, of course, now just another reference that's maybe important for us. So this is Ljubljana, a city, let's say, maybe 3 times smaller than Zagreb, which is kind of our complex of Slovenian architects all the time, that we live in such a small city, and then we come to Zagreb, and it's big. You have this really heroic modernism and so on, which we don't have, which is nor good nor bad, but just we are very fascinated by it. So this is, now we go zoom in, and we go to the place that's kind of important to us. So on the lower part, that's Faculty of Architecture, where we studied, where our kind of career basically began. And then next to it is, of course, I'm really sorry, we are from Ljubljana, we cannot avoid Plečnik, even if we would like to, but we will, oh, this is really, okay, it's a bit grainy. So on top, it's this building here. It's the very famous National Library by Plečnik, but we won't talk about this. We'll talk about this building. It's his renovation, or you could call it the adaptive reuse of an historic Križanke monastery. So it's quite an interesting, it's like, we will sell it like you sell, let's say, the Diocletian Palace. And, but of course it's smaller because Ljubljana is smaller and so on. So this is, okay, it was kind of 18th century monastery with a Baroque church. And of course it was a totally enclosed program with, of course, monks. But then in the 50s, Plečnik was invited to renovate it. And now today, so it's interesting because of few facts. One is that it's from something exclusive becomes something open, inclusive, and now it's a middle school for design, and it's also a Ljubljana festival. Okay, the offices, but the most important, it's a summer theater for 2,000 people, and the part in front of it, it's a public square, but when there's events, it works like an open foyer. And it's, of course, what's also quite important, there's also a restaurant. So it's basically a public building. What's also very important for us, and then there are temporary uses. So this kind of temporality is already in a way introduced here. So let's say the Baroque church was, of course, used as a church, but then in the 50s, it was from these Plečnik renovations now works as an exhibition space, as concert space, but also because now it has been given back to the church. Now will probably again become a church, or will be closed. And again, there are negotiations again with. So the Ljubljana festival wants the school to move out. So it's very dynamic space, and. Of course, this is very, let's say, inspiring, or it's a good model to talk about. And maybe for us, the most interesting part is, otherwise it's a really nice photo, But this is one not so known part, but if you're Ljubljana, you necessarily have to look at it. So it's Hell's Courtyard and Peklensko dvorišče. The idea, it's really small, but when you're there, you're not sure if this is, of course it has no roof, because it was a remaining space between church and then buildings. But for us it's very important because, of course, why again this is important, it's from year 57. So this is last Plečnik's work, he died after that. After that he actually didn't finish it. But if you think what happened at that time, it was Sigren building was built, Guggenheim was built, you know what, in Zagreb Hill was built. So basically Plečnik went his own way, basically against the kind of canon. And this is also an important lesson. So you can go against the canon or against the fashion. I mean, not necessarily, it doesn't mean that you have to or that's good or bad, but this is also one possibility to just go your own way. And then why this is kind of important for us. So you see this is remaining basically 4 facades that were nothing special, but with a very few simple gestures, he totally changed the ambience. So on the most important thing is he put this kind of prefab terrazzo lights, a grid of them all around, and through this, I mean, it looks like really Herzog de Meuron. You know, he basically made one gesture, one really important ambient. And so this is one. The second thing that's important, here on the ground floor, after the bench, these are canalization pipes. So he actually used ready-made, something super cheap, in order to gain, let's say, architectural ambiental effect. And inside the canalization pipes, there are stones. So things that remain there, that would be thrown away, he used it. So something that's kind of not important on, so something that's waste, something that's basically negative, and waste is something that our society produces in huge amounts. So he was able to turn this around and produce something absolutely positive out of it. And this is something that we think it's important, and maybe we also try to do in some of our projects. And this is, of course, this thema that's very important now, recyclation, adaptive reuse, and so on. So now finally to go to the 3 projects. The first project is actually a table, but it's more of it, more than this. It's a social project that happened between the COVID. So the first part of COVID in Slovenia, it was a lockdown. So in the first 3 months, everyone was basically at home and working from home, but still, at least we had quite some time left. And also, so there we got a mail by Belgian crew. So one was Central Architects from Brussels. Then it was a Catone magazine. This is really nice magazine that also publishes books, etc., that are quite interesting with young European production, and also architectural curating practice. So this was kind of thing that was invented to make this kind of events. They have also a gallery in Brussels where they invite young people to live and work there. And of course the idea was that they invited, I think, 44 or something, let's say, young European architects, that they produce a table with their fascination. So that's why the title of the project was Objects of Fascination. So the task was, of course, it was very, very well curated. So first we got the manual how to do it, you know. So you should choose whatever do you think it's important for you, or in architecture or whatever, and then you should, your format is 1 meter by 2 meters, because this is the aluminum plate. It's really 5 millimeters thick, until it will stand off how many legs that you want, but the leg is like 3 centimeters and it's 30 centimeters long. So this was the system, and in this system you had to produce your object, your table. And of course, this was after the invitation. It was, I mean, usually we take, at least we think, really too long to produce something. But it was basically in one evening we did this design. So we just sent 2 mails here and there. And this was probably all the other people did it in a similar way. So you have here all the suggestions from what then these designs derived. And so I don't know, here you probably know some names. Okay, some is from Central, some is by Fala, some is by Bruder, etc. And this was then the render of the first ideas. So then, of course, what was our fascination? Let's say, I mean, maybe we have more. And this is an artwork by a Serbian artist working. He's still alive, but basically he had his career in Milano. He's Radomir Damjanović Damjan, and this is called Krug, circle. So why we took this? We could also put whatever other artwork, but it was important. It's kind of from let's say area where that's kind of our, let's say, cultural, or at least what we perceive, let's say, landscape. Not some super famous artist or event, but this is one thing that was important. So that it kind of, these localities are important for us. And from this, again, you can derive some kind of ideas. But then it was also this, the idea what's more important, because his artwork is not very innovative, as you see it. He didn't invent this kind of abstract circles, no? It's kind of, but also people before him didn't invent it. So he's kind of a short history. You could have it more of these circles. So first is, of course, Malević, then is Hilma of Klimt from the 20s, then it's Jasper Jones, then few years after it's Damian, and then you have Ugo Rondinone, etc. The important idea here for us is that because with this super competitive architectural scene, you know, there's kind of this idea that you should invent and have ingenious ideas all the time. But here, the point is that maybe if you take something that already exists and remake it a bit or reinterpret it accordingly to the, let's say, social or other situation that you critically react to it, this can be really an autonomous creative work. In this case, artwork, or could be, let's say, autonomous work of architecture. So, and what's also important, it's kind of, okay, you can ease up a bit, you don't need to invent all the times new stuff. And that's why this was our fascination, and from this we, of course, produce a book. But as I said, it was very, very, very curated, very clear rules and tasks, so that no one made mistake or did do things totally out of order. And this was the plan that we drew. And of course, this is then the table that was made. And of course, what's important here one was the event that kind of connected people in the time where no one was kind of connected, and then it was of course all these people, everything was produced. So 44 projects were produced and then exhibited. But the important thing is that after the exhibition, then the object is what remains. And this object shouldn't be just something beautiful or ugly or whatever, but okay, we saw that what we did, because there's really a lot of tables, better or worse or better in the world, but in the idea that if you do something, should kind of be not a normal table. So of course, if you put it together, we don't have a photo of it actually, you have a big normal coffee table, you can use it as such. But then if you put it in 3 parts, or in 2 or 3 parts, you have one small coffee table and 2 things that are kind of meta objects, are actually not tables, you know? So it's quite interesting. I mean, of course, you cannot use it in a normal way, so the user has to invent a way to use them, you know? And of course, that's also the temporariness. If you put them together, they are never the same table. They're all the time different. Your kids put them in different places, and they kind of produce their kind of another layer in the environment. This was maybe what's kind of the idea of these objects then. Of course, this was then shown in Anja says I'm too long. In Met in Brussels. Here you see more tables. our table. And of course, at the end, also there's a book that was produced with all the objects, all the theory behind it. Everyone explained, as I tried now, why the fascination. And this is somehow what remained to the end. So basically, this was after this was another temporary project. Maybe some of you saw it. This was our proposal for the Venice Biennale. It was for the previous Venice Architectural Biennale. It was open call. I think that 20 or something people answered. We somehow won. The time span was really short. But of course, we proposed a theme, kind of theoretical framework, and then later added the design. Of course, this is the place that you know. We didn't have our pavilion at that time, so we had to go to Venice to choose from one of the 3 remaining, and we chose this place. So it's kind of room. This was kind of, let's say, important for us, so that we don't put an object there, but that we have this possibility to make an enclosed environment, but also also not to have neighbors in a way, but also you cannot go next to it. You have to go through our exhibition, so it's basically unavoidable. So okay, we take kind of risk. If it was good or bad, I mean, you decide about that. Everyone sees it. So this was the situation there. Another thing that was important is then the brief. Because we think that when a lot of exhibitors go with the brief of the main curator, I mean, then the Biennale is strong. So we decided, yeah, somehow to go to react also to the brief of Leslie Rocco. But our basic idea was that everything happened in the time when basically because of the war.
Energy crisis.
Yeah, Ukraine kind of initiated basically energy crisis. We of course, this was what's known for a long time. Basically, this kind of environmental question was for us something that's important, but began with a critique of what we architects basically do. So the houses, let's say, look more or less the same as 50, or are made more or less the same as 50 years ago, but the society totally changed. So a lot of new problems arose, but we as architects somehow slept through that. So a house today looks like the same as before, but just packed with some kind of technology that tries to save you money or to make you too cold or warmer and so on. But our idea was that we as architects should approach towards this question, so towards the question of heating and cooling in an architectural way, not with or how to integrate the technology. We are not, of course, against technology, and that's why the title is ±1 degree. Because with ±1 degree, you can change how people behave in a room. You can also change typology, or vice versa. With the change of typology, you can, of course, change how these kind of temperature things happen. Of course, the title of Biennale was Laboratory of the Future. So we were asking ourselves what laboratory could be. We said, okay, if you invite, let's say, around 50 young practitioners, architects, and other creatives from Europe, we kind of cover all the territory. We maybe have kind of this grid of knowledge, but also basically it should be not just Slovenian question, but kind of broader. And of course, the task was that everyone, we also invited Studio Ploča that were also happy, friendly enough to come here to listen to us. So Fran and Hannah, hi. Everyone had to propose one or more case studies, historic case studies where the question of temperature was articulated with architectural means. And this is then all the people that answered. So most of them risked with us and answered our call, but then just go through what's the idea was. So this is something, it can be on the scale of furniture. So basically, if you go in this kind of bed, you close the curtains and you warm yourself, you know, in the case where there's no warming. Or here in this is Scandinavian case study, you had 3 different buildings, and in the winter they were in the smaller one. Otherwise, when it got warmer, they just extended their living environment in all the other ones. And then this one that looks like a dock, it's also from Scandinavia. It was, you see, this is the roof is the seaweed, and it was put over the winter to warm, and then later it was given to animals to eat it. But this was also a social project because men went to the sea to fish, and women made this roof. So the whole village were together making roof for one building, other building, etc. And then, of course, so the idea is that you can do with architecture or with something more than just warm the thing. So of course, something that you really know, it's loggia, it's here. Then there are cases that are here forever, and it's nothing new. You know, but also in contemporary situations, Lacaton Vassal showed what's possible with this. So it's not just a cooling device or warming device, but it's kind of prosthesis that changes the typology. It's also kind of social element in the building. And then, of course, these kind of questions can go even further, you know. So these kind of energy principles can kind of produce basically environments that go beyond the building. Basically, this is some kind of settlement. Now it's in Spain, and it's basically kind of met building in houses that are put in the ground. And of course, in order not to just have an atlas of these nice old case studies, we said that we have to kind of make it in a way that we show how they're relevant for today, how they theoretically could be used for thinking about these kind of questions today. And then we put them in groups. It were 13 groups that we called principles. And this is kind of this theoretical framework through which you could maybe think about doing things. Through 5 of them were kind of then taken as case studies, model 1-to-1, from which we produce our pavilion. And then again, these are the few case studies. I won't bore you with them, but I would just again like to point out maybe 2 of them. One is the oven. Probably also have them. You know, in Europe, in the middle North Europe, we have them. In Spain, they don't have them. But it's basically the idea that it's not some technological device put in the basement, but it's basically it's kind of in the middle of basically the building. People eat there, sleep there, put crops on it. So it's basically social center of a house. And just a second. And the other one, this is really nice. This is also our fascination. The one on the right-hand side. It's shepherd's hut in Velika Planina in Slovenia. Now they are kind of weekend houses, but historically they were in the small. In the center, there's a small hut where the shepherd lived, and around him there were goats, cows, and similar animals, and they were basically his insulation. So the idea is how you can conceptualize a thing as insulation or as living together with animals, and it produced some kind of special and very unique typology. And this was a principle that we called a room within a room. No? And another principle that we won't show here was also a kind of temperature zoning, which is actually this nice project here that we are in. So basically, the thesis there was that different activities need different temperatures. So you don't need rooms with the same temperatures. So with different temperatures, you again get different new kind of type of environment. Or vice versa, with new kinds of environment, you could articulate the temperature, which was really nicely used in this rooms where we are now. Of course, how it was done. Here are the 5 elements. What was also very important for us, everything, the material parts. Of course, the Biennale has to be everything. They appeal to us that it should be low carbon, etc. Because Biennale, of course, one of the biggest critiques, okay, you can criticize or not the content, but the idea is that there are millions of cubic meters of waste produced there. So we try to avoid this in the best way possible. So all the materials were kind of course, first they were insulatory materials to speak about the theme, that was our theme. But of course, were materials that you could later reuse, recycle, take apart, and don't throw away. This was what was brought to Ljubljana.
This was our workshop for a month.
Yes, this is quite a funny story. When we came there, because of circumstances that we want to go into now, we had to move there, and this was made together with our friends, Vidic Architects, so we are 5 all together. So we moved there and became vernacular builders with not a lot of knowledge of how to do anything. And we had to go there, and we're working there for 12, 16 hours a day, and more or less built the pavilion ourselves as a necessity. Of course, as you entered it, what you see on the right-hand side is this kind of interpretation of the oven. It was important that, of course, when you're at Biennale, you are tired, and at some point you just go through everything. So we said, okay, we have to be in a way nice to people and enable them to sit there, because if someone will sit there, will then begin to observe the things around and maybe even begin to read. And of course, also, then we showed that this is, again, it became kind of, okay, we have really nice images here. We don't have anything later, sadly, but people really used it for sitting, for browsing, for communicating. Children are playing on it. And also, so this was how it, in a way, worked.
Yeah, but the main point is that in today's houses, the installation thing is just for heating or cooling, but in vernacular examples, they also have this kind of ritual role. So it was very important for us to understand and trying to think about approaches, yes, how we can deal now with different projects to use this kind of knowledge they had before. That it's not just a technical part.
So this is the lower ceiling. Historically, in bourgeois environments or really simple environments, they put kind of secondary ceiling, and when lowering it, they of course retained temperature. But it was interesting that you can really change the ambience with it. So you can change what actually happened there at the site. Acoustic here was different. We used it as a light, so also ambience was totally different. And it was very important. So the idea is that if you articulate temperature, you could change architecture. And of course, the materiality was also something that was important. So everything was kind of tactile, because in a lot of cases, Biennale is overload of informations, black box, a lot of technique, special effects, etc. But here it was, we wanted to kind of make this calm environment with totally different tactility, acoustics, also light, and so on. And of course, this was the first idea how to give you the idea of everything. Of course, next to it, there was also kind of small art project by a photographer that we invited. It also showed with thermo camera that engineers used for detecting thermal bridges to, in a way, show the situations of changing the temperature. Of course, talking before already, thinking what will be the afterlife. We also, the profile, it was lime tree, lipa. It was 4 by 8, and of course we also made some furniture, not just to people to see there, but also to show that you can reuse this for furniture. That was later actually done. And of course, this on the left, there's also all, the material was wool felt. So the felt was donated to a young architect that made an experimental house for his mother. So they are actually, they used it for roof insulation, and of course also the bricks that were from Veneto area or so not to bring them really from far will be later. All the material was more or less donated, because you have some amount of money, but when you pay for your place for half a year, you basically lost 80% of budget, you know. So when you also pay the people that are there and etc., then you have nothing, and then you have to build a project, and then you begin to ask for financial or material help. And of course, here also the bricks will be used by, I guess, Anja's and Vasa's students in Ljubljana to make architectural interventions in public space. And so this is this was then the last day how we went through Canal. And of course, the thing that it has what was interesting, there was quite some interest for this, and then later we produced a book where all the case studies are published, some interviews, and of course this thesis explained. So it was in English and Slovenian, so kind of catalog or book that later remained. And of course it was used in some architectural faculties as kind of book or where people...
Yeah, we are somehow proud that this exhibition didn't stay just there after the Venice Biennale, but also has this kind of afterlife. So we got a lot of invitations to discuss about topics that we present in our book in different universities, such as Medrisio, Berlin, also in Vienna, and etc. So I think it's very important for us that this theme is, I mean, it was some kind of, we were glad that this theme that we proposed for the pavilion is somehow very hot today.
Yes, because later it was also, so people from, so if you were not there and you want to see it, you can go to Molsee. It's a city 1 hour from Hamburg, and we let's say made a kind of re-edition, a bit enlarged and a bit bigger because the spaces were bigger, and again we again made this as an exhibiting pavilion with all the contents that were there, produced some additional furniture, and it's still there until November. But also the book that Anja showed you before, it's now featured in Klima Biennale in Saint-Étienne, done by Filip Romić, and he also produced a kind of similar book 1 year later.
Yeah, inspired by the same concept, of course. But like,
no,
as I said before,
maybe it's coincidence. I really don't know. No, because the theme is kind of seems that it's relevant now.
Following the Biennale project, we returned to the local context, Ljubljana. So, Temporary National Theatre Drama Ljubljana. These projects present some temporary solutions where temporary is not just a functional, but also strategic. So it's kind of spatial interventions that uses its temporary character to generate broader architecture, urban and social impact. The project is located in the city center, and it's situated within the highway ring, a few kilometers for the city center with a good accessibility. Much like in other European cities, cultural programs are being used to revitalize peripheral zones, effectively extending the city center and decentralizing culture infrastructure. So the new intervention in this building activates urban potential and serves as a social inclusive gesture. This was, I mean, of course, this was our view of point. Maybe we were very enthusiastic about this project, but on the other hand, the location was part of the politicization of the project, because why to bring the program out of the city center to forgotten some kind of no place? So the public is more or less from the city center and used to go to the theater in their slippers. So, and according to them, the choice of location was scandalous. It was a scandal. So this was the Litostroy area before, a peripheral post-industrial zone, long considered, today considered as a gray area of the city. Some of the buildings were built by known modernist architects, but what we find also important were the open common green spaces between the building intended for the welfare of the workers. The biggest quality of the building is not architecture or ambitious structure, but vast spaces. The voids offer a lot of free spaces that can be colonized with different programs. Most of the spaces in the buildings were underused storages. And the inner courtyard of the building had only logistic role, but we recognized its potential for at least partly becoming a common social space. And like I said before, in this modernistic area, the architects tried to somehow put some potentials with these green parts of the industrial area. Because if you go to that part, you will see just the buildings and the roads and nothing, no quality public space. We are dealing with this building for some time now, so the project started a few years ago. We believe that architecture can be initiator, so the first trigger of programmatic development was a small bistro. At that time, no one was really interested to rent a space in the building. The building was too rough for them, and the area not inviting enough. So the next project, maybe 1 year later, that came was Gym Vigor, that we also designed. And after that, the next intervention was an office space with the different types of working environments, like Jure showed before at the beginning of the presentation. And the biggest volume of 2,000 square meters was used for storage and later as a covered parking, occasionally rented out for different events. This experience gave birth to the idea of the investor of setting up a multi-purpose event space executed in the time of COVID, because there was some kind of rule that how do you say, events, I mean, you need to have more square meters to have an event. That's why in Ljubljana we don't have this kind of not programmatic spaces. So this was the opportunity, and the first program was City Magala. It was a kind of city theater that had, I think, 3 weeks of some kind of temporary theater already set there. So the first intervention, the big storage, was to replace a worn-out roof structure and build simple infrastructure that would support different kind of events. Given the unknown, the future project, we searched for an architecture solutions that would define space in a way that would enable maximum flexibility of potential programs. We decided on a concept because we didn't know what kind of program they will be in the future. That we put some fixed service cores in the corners of the building to leave as much as volume as possible undefined. In the pink color, you see 2 service cores on a thick wall with the backstage programs, and on the other one is some kind of ziggurat with the main public entrance, cafe, and service parts. The first part of the project was designed and built during Corona lockdowns, meaning that we were not able to supervise and the execution very frequently. So that's why it was some kind of design decision, was to build with the simple methods, materials, and details. And the materiality should also survive the rough future use in order for 2 objects to have a degree of autonomy and presence in the space. We painted with a reflective silver color. So financial restrictions called for new solutions. We were mentioned ready-made design before the presentation at the beginning. For instance, slides were made from ventilation pipes and drywall metal profiles. So, I mean, this is some kind of method that we use because our budget are all the time some kind of squeezed. So we try to do with minimal intervention some kind of maximal effect. So this is the entrance grade. The big opening is the entrance for the big masses of the people that attended different events in large trucks that brings the stage sets. Cascading platforms were used as observation decks during the big events. So in this image, you can see how it functioned before the National Theatre came. So it functioned like at the evening, it was some kind of event space, but during the day, there was still a parking place for offices in the building. So this is courtyard facade with our intervention. The multi-purpose hall with the name Le Chez Simpea, set in 2 years of functioning, showed the potential of the space to host different public programs. All the mentioned interventions the last years triggered interest for the main National Theatre.
So yes. So now again to the temporality. So the basic idea was how to fill these big voids with the program. And on the diagram you see, okay, this was the initial situation, then it was the building L56 that Anja was explaining about, and then we had to put inside a National Theatre.
Yeah.
So how it came to that?
Yeah, I just want to say maybe about the time thing.
Yes. So the point was that National Theatre, of course, was in the city center, in the old historic building that was in a really bad state. And so also the inspections actually demanded for the theater to move out. No, they threw them out basically. But before that, of course, there was made a project in competition, one by Perović for renovation. That didn't happen. So of course they had to really move out quickly. And then when we sat down and signed the contract, in 10 months there was already the first show. So we had 10 months to make a project. So initial design. Then detailed design, and of course also to build the thing. And then the idea was then that they will be inside around 3.5 years, and that in between time the building will be renovated in the city center. So this is kind of temporary theater. Of course, for us was also kind of challenge, but also the possibility, if it's temporary, to do something different, but to use this temporarity in, let's say, kind of as a positive thing. And the idea was, of course, to put inside some few interventions that will be there for, let's say, 3-4 years, and then they will be then changed and dismantled. So we with this kind of quick gestures, we had to change the existing volumes and organize 400 square meters of theater, and of course, so a big theater with 360 seats, a small theater with kind of black box with 100 seats, two let's say,
Practice stages?
Stages, and of course service area. And of course the stages are actually bigger than in the moment, and we provided one service stage more than they have it in the moment.
In the old building.
So now, so this is first the building for the main stage. So this is the one that was the multi-purpose room before. So again, so this is the section. So at the entrance area, this is the thing that we call ziggurat. That was now, of course, used as service area, and on the top it's a bar that services the theater. And then the second pinkish thing is this one is basically the stage, and the main stage, and then the backstage. And of course, there was the idea that you can, on these different levels, from these different levels, you can observe, of course, stage or the happening in the main hall. So this is the outside. Of course, from the outside, this is actually the reality of the building. Of course, we didn't renovate the 3,000 square meters of facade. We had no budget, but we didn't see also any purpose in that. So just we can kind of make this Venturian gesture in a way. We said, drama, drama, drama. This is the name of theater. And of course, later when there will be something else, they will just put this away and put another title over it. And of course, in between, we just put this kind of neon lights from, neon lights, kind of lights from Bauhaus, and this is the basic how you show it in the evening. But of course, the idea was also, because you have a street here next to it, how to communicate the content that no one knows on the scale of kind of this banal but vast environment. Of course, this is the entrance. We just the idea was that we on the building that all the signage that are kind of put on the building, that are part of the building, that was made kind of in the old days. You kind of just paint it on top of it, and it's also the cheapest way. And of course, here you enter. You have here the red kind of red textile floor that leads you inside. So this is the windbreak. We kind of sometimes, it's a cliche, you know, kind of red textile, but he said it's important to have a cliche because the building there has no character whatsoever. So we said, okay, we have to show that this is a theater, and we put this kind of textile inside. So for us, or for basically the idea of a theater is kind of red text.
Yeah, because there was a fear of the audience that how is going to be this classical theater in this industrial object in industrial buildings. So that's why we somehow tried with entrances to go back to this kind of classical idea, just to somehow that people are more how do you say that?
That they're familiar and that they understand that this is not a cinema or I don't know what. But again, maybe interesting here already we used, of course, how to treat these big surfaces. We decided, okay, that we'll provide this idea of theater with textiles. Of course, the investor was basically private. So the ministry just signed a contract with him. Okay, just give us the theater in 10 months, we will pay you rent, but you have to provide everything. So they gave us the brief of theater with all the acoustic problematic and so on. So, but of course, again, there was no budget, so but the investor had a lot of this kind of textile in his storage because he organized events before. So we took this red textile, and of course there are different sizes. We just cut them on 5 meters because this was the height of the space, but everything else we folded. So we had this kind of exaggerated presence of material. Of course, now we move further. We go to the main foyer. The old theater actually has no foyer, has no just really low kind of corridor, and you basically you enter it in kind of this way because it was a small provincial theater originally. And of course, then we put inside this wooden. This is the entrance to the main auditorium, and of course, our idea was there is a reference that we like. This is Semper Depot in Vienna. So basically, originally Semper made it as a storage for theater. So this space before was kind of logistic space to put all the things inside, but now in the back side there's art academy, but here is the kind of internal main kind of covered square. And this is what we wanted to achieve. So on the right hand side you have the existing ziggurat, on the left is what we did, and in between we articulated this big void, this kind of entry
inner square.
Inner square. So here, okay, this is one of the openings. So the idea is that, of course, for us, again, one of these archetypes or cliches is that in theater you have to have the stairs to come to enter, you know, so to have this drama of entering. So we put these two this level where you enter. And of course, this kind of loggia, so it looks a bit like Shakespearean theater, but turned around. So there you have already kind of theater. And from the other side, so you see it, you are like in a steep valley, where when after the premiere, all the actors come, they have cake, etc., cameras, and they are down, and people are all around looking at them down, and it functions quite well. So this is how it looks from the other side. On top, there's a bar. On the other side, there's again this kind of entrance. This is made from, and this is then when you enter the main auditorium. We retained the seats from the old theater because they won't need them anymore. But again, we wanted to put some kind of familiar elements there. They're kind of this kind of golden brown velvet and mustard color. And Anja says it like it is. And basically, but we also take the carpet we found in this color so that you have this kind of landscape of this, you know. But the material that we used, it was kind of 100 square meters of something. So
it was some kind of continuation of the themes that we deal in Venice Biennale. So it's some kind of continuation, how to produce not too much waste, or at least very minimal, and how to reuse the structures or materials after its end of the program. So in the same logic as we did in Venice Biennale, but here in much wider, bigger gesture, we did the whole tribune with the wooden CLT elements, so it's possible when it will be dismantled to put it or to use it for another project.
Because the pieces are fairly big, some are 10 meters and so on. So we have these plans, and at some point we will use them to produce something new. So this is of course the bar that was already existing. Again, we just take all the furniture from the fundus of drama. So this is their furniture, but also furniture that was used as scenographies in place. So people that go there also already are a bit familiar with all the stuffs. And some chairs are really extremely old, and not everything is kind of fake. You know, there's a chair that's actually from 17th century, but I'm not sure they know it. Of course, now to the central part. So what we showed before was kind of this soft infrastructure, the things that will change. But then we kind of this other public, let's say, infrastructures that we did will remain for the later use. So we made it in a way that it works now, but that could work also after the change of program. So these are kind of stairs, entry squares, and a building. So the building that we did here, again, had a funny story. Of course, if you observe, if you remember the photo before, here was a really small building. We wanted to recycle it, just put a roof on it that will be a terrace from a bar. But then when the works began, the building just fell apart. So we had like 1 week to make a project, actually, to make a new building in the same gabarites, so in the same, let's say, volume. And this one is made of concrete because we decided that everything that will stay there will be made out of concrete. So it's rough enough, but it's also in a way has the same materiality as the structures there. So that in a way becomes one with the existing. You know, we didn't have, for us there's no need that there's every time a really strong distinction between what's new and what's old, because also in this way the old becomes contemporary again. It's just one organic gesture. And then this is of course everything that and maybe I have to tell this. Here you see we did a lot of staircases, of course, because here it's not just a base, but also people use it here because the internal courtyard is for people that work there. And people use it for having a coffee to socialize, but also could be organized for an improvised place. And also the fire escapes were made broader so that you can use it to hang out and so on.
We have to finish, I think.
Yeah, we'll finish in 1 minute. And then this was, of course, we also made a pavilion for them that has no use. They can make a picnic there or whatever. It's made from old entry doors in the building. This was the original situation. And of course, we didn't want to just throw them away because some people said, okay, if you give us 500 euros, we just will care for them. And then we thought what we could do with that. And in a way, we said they have also almost the scale of a house, and then somehow they became a house. And then, yes, this is the building that was destroyed. It's actually the main living room, so it's an internal bar for actors and people that work there, because they have like altogether 140 people that work there. So it's just visible concrete with inox bar from one piece. And of course, we recycled also the furniture. We didn't design, but the old furniture from the old bar. This is on top of it, it's a terrace. That's public terrace from the main bar of the theater. So the last part now.
It's a small theater, so we designed a new entrance because there was also just a parking place in front of that. So the main thing is that we designed or we tried to do a small green square to enter the new small theater. So the small theater is more experimental. The plays are more experimental, so that's why we said, okay, maybe let's try to do something more relaxed. So we use this kind of silver curtains that are used usually in agriculture to cover the glass houses. So because, like Jure said before, we were really limited with the budget, and we tried to use our textile that we had from before, from the investor or the drama, or that if you buy a new one, it has to be really a low budget. So as you see here, we designed the bench, but also the lights were like ready-made from the pipes, installation pipes. So again, the theme that is some kind of repeated from the main entrance hall, this kind of red foyer, gives some kind of character of the classical theater.
Just a fun fact, you know? This is, of course, the main foyer is totally conditioned with lights. This one changes through seasons and through day. But what's also interesting, it's very divisive space. So that means maybe we did it right. Some people really liked it. Some find it really sexy, but some don't like it. So it's like rave party, scenography. It's not appropriate for theater, but it's really good because no one says, okay, so some like it, some hate it. So maybe this is kind of right situation that architecture is not really kind of too polite, shouldn't be too polite. And the theater is just a black box. And then this is, now we finished with the talk. It's just how the main theater was built in 1 week, I think. I mean, the structure was built in 1 week, everything else in 1 month. So here you see the dimensions of this structure that will be later somehow reused. But of course, this was another color before, but as you imagine, we didn't have final project before we began building. So everything was made in the same time. And sometimes we decided on site what should be done. So our original idea was that all the wood should be black because we took the lowest quality because of budget, of course. But then we saw when it was there that it's actually interesting, that it has this kind of tactility, familiarity, etc. And that all the kind of mistakes in the wood are basically, you don't see it because of the scale. So of course we had to do it in 2 layers with thick insulation in between and no elements protruding because of the acoustics. So the acoustic situation was really done like in a normal theater. So underneath it's a wardrobe, and here of course the pillars. And maybe what's interesting, all the openings that we cut out here on site were then later used for the
Counter.
For the counter. So of course the acoustics here's the acoustic shell that was kind of done by acoustic engineers. Here you see people doing the lights, the chandeliers from the system.
And what unitizes all the project that we presented today, from a small CNC mild table to a national pavilion and temporary theater, is believed that temporarity is not weakness nor reaction to constraints, but a design strategy that that has some kind of potential. So we think that today temporarity can mean many things: a response to climate urgency, a tool for prototyping social and cultural programs, means of inclusion, especially in places that we once overlooked or excluded, or a framework to explore architecture as a process, not just as a product. Thank you. Oprosti ako smo bili dugi.
Zapravo je baš zanimljivo kada gledamo vaš rad kazališta i gledamo ovaj prostor u kojem se nalazimo. Na neki način daju se iščitati neki isti, slični arhitektonski principi. Ono što mi se čini da je prisutno u jednom i u drugom projektu je i tema kuće u kući, tema minimalne rekonstrukcije. Provlači se cijelo vrijeme tema, sintagma low budget. I zapravo se pitam i sebe, pa pitam i vas, s obzirom da mi se čini da posljednjih 20-30 godina zapravo u arhitekturi ne svjedočimo inovacijama i jako postajemo sve opterećeni nekim drugim strukama, zaštiti od požara, koeficijentima toplinske provodljivosti i tako dalje. Mislite li Ali ono što mi je predivno je zapravo da se vratim i na vaše bijenale i na ovo čemu svjedočimo ovdje, je da se zapravo radi o mapiranju i prakticiranju rješavanja tih problema kroz arhitektonske elemente, a ne više kroz parametre drugih struka. Čini li vam se da smo mi s takvim mišljenjem samo na nekoj margini ili da je možda doista došlo vrijeme neke promjene na način da možda u sveopćoj krizi i kaosu koji nas okružuje se mi kao arhitekti možemo konačno ponovno posvetiti rješavanju problema kroz arhitekturu?
Ja mislim da to nije na margini, mislim da sada to je nekao mainstream, što je dobro. I samo da ne teoretiziram previše, jedan dobar case study je ta IBAVI housing, to je ta balearski stanovanski sklad. I oni su, to je, ne znam, u 5-10 godina, oni su napravili neku pobudu da se stavlja stambenjake po baljarima. Okay. Jedni su u Palmi, jedni su u nekih malih vaseh, ne? U nekih malih settlementih. Tako da je ideja, okay, kako se to desi u Sloveniji, ne? Okay, ipak imamo to je, okay, it's not bad, a onda se nađe se neku parcelu u nekoj fringe situaciji i onda se zdevelopa tamo za 1000 stanovnika nešto na hitru, sa kontaktnom fasado i tako, ne? I isto, osnovni kriterij ti je koliko skver metara se nabuta unutra, kao kod da bi bio to nekao commercial development. A šta su tu desili? Oni su, jedan dio je bio material research i onda svi materijali su locally sourced i tako i onda su stvarali to kao infile u gradu ili u manjima lokacijama i jedni stambenjaki su kao sa 5 stanova i jedni su sa 20. Ali da strateško tako postavljeno da oni ustvaraju nekao javni prostor, tako da nije samo da ljudi žive tam, a da se izboljšuje neko situacijo. To je jedan dio. Drugi del, sve to su radili baš dobri arhitekti, možda i malo mlajši, i onda svi ti eksperimenti so bio je neka otvoreno, bilo je za nekao da se uradi neka tipologija, ne samo square meters, i onda ti vidiš take tipologije nema u Sloveniji za 50 godina, nema je. I onda vidiš baš dobre tipologije i onda i te kao ekološke strategije. Sve te najbolji primjeri napravljeni su tako da se oni, nemajo problem sa grijanjem, tamo je baš toplo, sve su napravljene sa nekim, ja bi to zvao ekološkim principi, da so hladne, da imajo zrak i tako. Tako da ja mislim da to sad je tu.
Da, to kad kažeš sad, pa nije ni grijanje uvijek nešto što je ono prepreka, ali zanimljiv je recimo pobjednik na ovogodišnjem bijenalu je talijanski arhitekt koji je profesor na TU Berlin, koji je na bijenalu na kojem bih rekla da se većinski dio radova je negdje pokriva ili neki indigenous knowledge, neko mapiranje starih znanja ili zapravo potpunu digitalizaciju. On je radio i s njim smo se evo družili, pošto smo bili jedini u Arsenalu, oni i mi arhitekti koji su sami izvodili. Radio je jedan komunalni pasivni element za hlađenje vani u javnom prostoru. Dakle, ponovno rješavanje problema klimatskih promjena kroz arhitekturu, kroz arhitektonski element, a ne kroz, znamo već šta, ne? Da, ta tipologija stanovanja kod nas nikako da se promijeni, jer je i dalje refleksija parkirnih mjesta u podzemnim garažama, tako da tome još nećemo dugo, čini mi se, svjedočiti dok ne riješimo promet. Da li vam se isto tako čini, mislim možda, ne znam da li Krešo i Filip želite se referirati na ovo pitanje?
Može. Da, ja sam zapravo htio reći da imam osjećaj da je osnovni problem u svemu što mi nemamo dovoljno iskustva uopće sa nekom tipologijom, prije svega brownfielda. Geografski smo tu gdje jesmo i zapravo ta neka kapitalna politička situacija u kojoj se nalazimo nam ne omogućava uopće da imamo i da dijelimo ta iskustva. Mi zapravo imamo društvo konzerviranja stvari i čekanja da se sve stvari nekako dogode unaprijed, da imamo sve savršene postavke i da onda tek djelujemo. Ja mislim da je važno zapravo da odmah djelujemo, jer generacije i generacije mladih ljudi zapravo čekaju tu promjenu. Vrijeme ide, a mi konzerviramo. Mi ne posjedujemo osobnu higijenu u gradu i zapravo grad se kao takav ni ne razvija. Mi vidimo samo neku novogradnju koja se događa, ali naš odnos prema starome je, osim konzerviranja, on ne postoji. Niti imamo neku suvremenu interpolaciju, niti na adekvatan način uopće pričamo o tome, već samo stojimo i čekamo da zapravo da se nešto poklopi i da onda odjednom će sve biti super. A zapravo po meni treba djelovati.
Da, zapravo je zanimljivo to da razmišljala sam dok ste predstavljali kazalište koje je rezultat privremenog iseljenja kazališta da bi se matično kazalište obnovilo, je li tako? To je zapravo kod nas bila situacija potresa. Znači, to su neki procjepi, čine mi se, u društvenim situacijama koji su svojevrsne greške, potres, covid, inflacija, u kojima mi onda tako brzo iskoristimo neki trenutak ne bi li stvorili nešto u što zaista vjerujemo, jer nam to nije omogućeno uobičajenim regulacijskim putevima. I ja razumijem, Filipe, želiš reći, mi nemamo vremena čekati da sakupimo novce za žbu.
Htio sam samo reći da nama se potres dogodio, ali mi i dalje, te kuće su iste.
Tako je, to i želim reći.
To je nakupina knaufa na cigli koja zapravo čak je gore jer ne zna šta se događa iza njega.
Da.
Za bilo koga ko kupuje stan ili za bilo koga ko živi u tom prostoru.
Da, umjesto da zapravo iskoristimo takve izvanredne situacije, pa možda inoviramo, mi zapravo ponavljamo uobičajene principe. Što je zanimljivo, tu su i teme prilaženju graditeljskom nasljeđu, bez obzira imalo ono arhitektonsku ili ambijentalnu vrijednost, možemo li tu iznaći također nove principe? Što mi se čini da u slučaju vašeg kazališta itekako evidentno je napravljeno. Mislim da je izvrsno napravljeno.
Možda nismo još jednu stvar, ako smo kod ovih standarda i ovo, nismo ispomenuli kroz predavanje. Ta temporary theater je sada u industrijskoj zoni i ako bi, mjesni red ne dozvoljuje da su tamo kulturne dejavnosti. Tako da to je bio baš veliki problem za nas i onda smo morali naći nešto kako bi mi uspjeli da stavimo unutra gledalište. I onda smo se nekako našli način da je ova dejavnost sve kao prijavljena kod temporary events. Tako da svake pola godine mi podaljšujemo tu situaciju. Ali inače nije u ovoj mjesni programski situaciji kulturna dejavnost tamo ne mora opstojati.
Iako je to zapravo ogromna industrijska zona gdje nema blizu
stanovnika. Ali nije više tako industrijska kao je bilo u 60-ima. Sada su neki mali tehnološki parki i sve se u nekim interesima mjesta spreminja pomalo u neke centralne dejavnosti, ali ova lokacija pač nije bila moguća da se to tako intervenira, zato smo morali obići nekako standarde da bi mogao ovaj teatar tamo stajati.
To je to. Dakle, samo situacija u kojoj uspijemo iznaći načine da nešto provučemo, koje su često izvanredne situacije, nastaje doista nešto što više niti nije inovacija za naše sustave vrijednosti koje mi nosimo, nego je nama je to nešto što se podrazumijeva, ali prema van to može izgledati kao inovacija, zato što nigdje nije ugrađeno niti upisano kao nešto što se može provoditi kao takvo.
Evo, Filip je malo prije spomenuo neku potrebu da se djeluje odmah, da se djeluje uvjetima kakvi jesu, pa sam htio zamoliti Filipa i Krešu da se kratko osvrnu na početak vlastite prakse, na pokretanje te prakse. Znači, prije jedno 10 godina ste počeli poslovati, izašli ste s faksa i u tih 10 godina ste stvorili ured koji, kao što vidimo ovdje, ima neki karakter i istraživanja, eksperimentiranja, ovaj prostor radionice to implicira. Međutim, možda svi ovdje ne znaju da se vaš ured, odnosno vaša firma, sastoji i od projektantskog studija i od građevinske firme, pa sam htio pitati kako ste uopće krenuli na takav način raditi i kako danas nastavljate tu metodu?
Zapravo, sasvim slučajno, znači, mi smo otvorili ured 2016. godine, ja sam čak nisam ni diplomirao, 6 mjeseci, to je 3 mjeseca prije svoje diplome. Krešo je radio u arhitektonskom birovu Fiolić-Boševski i ostvario ovlaštenje. I prvo smo zapravo zatekli jedan prostor u Katranu gdje smo djelovali poput svakog mladog ureda u nedostatku posla, traženju, eksperimentiranju i svemu. I shvatili smo zapravo, kad smo dobili prve projekte, da, ne znam, počeli su se oni izvoditi i kao projektantski nadzor smo nekako uvidjeli da je taj odlazak na gradilište ključan element kontroliranja svake situacije i na neki način smo shvatili da nam je možda i taj analogni princip toga da se dobro osjećamo tamo, neki potencijal za buduću praksu. I s obzirom da smo voljeli tehnologiju i, ne znam, dobili smo jedan studentski natječaj ranije u Rimu, pa smo kupili prvi 3D printer, počeli smo se baviti sa nekim maketarstvom i s tim. I onda smo shvatili da nam treba neki prostor možda u kojem možemo izraziti u potpunosti sve svoje želje. I slučajno smo došli zapravo preporukom, odnosno saznali iz Katrana, blizu nam je da ovdje postoji mogućnost uopće najma prostora. I prijavili smo se na natječaj, dobili smo prostor, međutim prostor je bio u potpunosti urušen, bez minimalnih tehničkih uvjeta i shvatili smo u tom trenutku da umjesto da idemo u potragu za poslom bezuvjetno i da rastemo kao arhitektonski ured, možda prije toga da pokušamo saznati tko smo upravo mi i što mi zapravo želimo od arhitekture. I nama je zapravo ovaj ured i sav taj proces ovdje nas je i oblikovao i dan danas nas oblikuje i zapravo mi kroz njega živimo svoj arhitektonski život unutar njega i pokušavamo implementirati sve te stvari koje smo ovdje naučili u samu praksu. I u međuvremenu dogodio se potres i kako ovdje smo bili nas dvojice, bilo je još par mladih inženjera koji su dolazili kao prijatelji, smo zapravo odlučili djelovati barem minimalno inženjerski u taj problem potresa. Zatekli smo zapravo da osnovni problem u potresu bili su dimnjaci koji su padali i imali razarajući efekt. I mi smo ovdje napravili jedan prototip modularnog elementa za dimnjak koji doslovno možete u tramvaju odnijeti na gradilište, dići ga gore za šaraf i spojiti, jer atestirana cijev uvijek ide unutra neovisno o tome. I tako smo kontaktirali par izvođača koje smo znali, to jest radnika koji su nam se svidjeli i pitali da li bi oni s nama pomogli nam to raditi. I mi smo doslovno sami, Krešo, ja i 2 radnika, počeli montirati dimnjake i počeli se baviti sa građevinom kao nekim procesom. Na kraju je to naraslo u jedan, ne znam kakav hibrid, ni sam još, hibrid građevinske firme u kojoj imamo 20 ljudi. Radimo na obnovi, primarno sa državom. Čak smo izvodili neke projekte koje smo i projektirali, ali prije svega smo to uzimali kao element učenja. Mi bi zajedno sa svojim radnicima od kojih učimo bi ovdje dolazili pa bi testirali neke žbuke, testirali pigmente za betone, brušenja, svakakve drvene strukture, spojeve i ostalo i onda njih implementirali u našu arhitekturu. I mislim da nekako sad idući korak koji bi trebao biti je svo to nasušno znanje iz građevine i neko znanje iz vođenja arhitektonskog ureda na kvalitetan način procesuirati i pretvoriti u neki arhitektonski stav koji bi možda mogao iznjedriti možda i neku promjenu. Tako da to je neki stav.
Mislim, ja bi još napomenuo ovaj naš put, pita se kako smo mi krenuli. Mislim, mi se tu većina, svi arhitekti, i vjerojatno se borite i financijski i sve. Mislim, mi smo našli neki prostor, znači ova naša izvođačka sekcija je narasla, a projektantski ured je ostao na nama dvojici u stvari. I to je u stvari nama oslobodilo od djelovanja arhitekturom. Upravo taj dio, ja ne znam da li postoji neki drugi način, ali ovo u samom, da ostanemo samo u projektiranju smo vidjeli da je jako teško zadržati tu slobodu projektiranja i kontrolu u projektiranju. Znači, ako ured naraste prevelik, to je možda već od 5 pa nadalje ljudi, barem sve što sam ja vidio, jednostavno krenu u nekom drugom smjeru. Pa evo, mi smo tu našli neko oslobođenje, bi ja rekao, u tom dijelu gdje nama ta građevina donosi neku financijsku stabilnost i slobodu, da se u stvari bavimo arhitekturom onako kako želimo.
Odnosno da, svaki klijent kad dođe s nama i razgovara s nama, on zna baš da ćemo nas dvojica to i napraviti, do zadnjih detalja. I razvili smo i svoje neke parametričke sustave, svoje neke interne rajno bimove u kojima uspijevamo zapravo sve u potpunosti manje više kontrolirati.
Pa, evo za kraj još jedno pitanje za Anju. Pretpostavljam da je vaše oslobođenje u radu na fakultetu. Ti uskoro pokrećeš ili si već pokrenula novi kolegij koji se zove Nove arhitektonske prakse. Možda samo da nam nešto kratko o tome kažeš.
Ja, na fakulteti, na katedri za arhitekturo, sada za 5. letnik poskušam napraviti novi predmet. To je v sklopu 5 predmeta za 5. letnik in imenuje se tako sodobne arhitekturne prakse. In v bistvu v tej arhitekturni poklic je že 150 godin. Vseeno. Arhitekturni poklic je že 150 let isti, enak, ne menja se baš bistveno, ali družba se menja ves čas. In naš arhitekturna stroka mora nekako odreagirati na to situacijo, pojavljajo se novi problemi in v bistvu moramo z nekimi aktivističnimi praksami, kot v bistvu kolegi omenjajo, nekako ratati bolj relevantni za današnji čas. Se pravi, pri predmetu bomo poskušali razlikovati, katere so te neustaljene arhitekturne prakse, ne te, ki so obstajali do zdaj, ampak v smislu arhitekturne prakse, ki so tudi same po sebi projekt. Vaša praksa je v bistvu projekt, se pravi, na kakšen način smo lahko kot arhitekti bolj aktivni, kako lahko sami najdemo, se pravi, najdemo problem ali ga poskušamo rešiti in na kakšen način ga tudi sami speljemo naprej. Tako da v bistvu ta predmet bo mogoče odpiral nek nov diskurs, neke nove poglede, tako da bo tudi mladi arhitekti, ki bo ustvarjali nove prakse, začeli razumeti, da arhitekturna praksa ni vezana samo na klasično projektiranje, ampak da ponuja veliko več kot to in da arhitekt mora biti ta initiator, ta organizer of process, da se lahko postane praksa relevantna za danes.
Pa hvala, evo sretno s tim kolegijom, treba nove smjerove otvarati.
Evo, ja bi se još, imam osjećaj da smo još dosta dugo i da je neko vrijeme da završimo. Htio bih vas pozvati sve da nastavimo u neformalnom tonu i da zapravo istražite ovaj prostor i šetnjom i druženjem. Također htio bih vas pozvati na otvorenje godišnje izložbe ostvarenja hrvatskih arhitektica i arhitekata koji će se održati utorak 10.6. na Savskom nasipu između Mosta Slobode i Močvare i u pogonu jedinstva u velikoj dvorani. Najava ide kroz koji dan, tako bit će sve ćete vidjeti. Htio bih se zahvaliti Anji i Juri koji su potegnuli iz Ljubljane radi ovog, Kreši i Filipu koji su bili domaćini ovog i pomogli u organizaciji svega. Molim? I dalje su domaćini. Našim sponzorima, pogotovo velikim sponzorima Hermanu i Kaparolu. I evo, tu je piće ovdje i ovdje još ko nije vidio terasa za druženje, tako da hvala svima na dolasku.